Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm really excited to bring you today's video. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's get started. The year was 2024. Ethan Reynolds had learned that his grandfather, Jack Reynolds, had something very important he wanted to tell him before he passed away. Jack, a former CIA agent, had decided to share a secret he had been hiding for years. Ethan had noticed that his grandfather had been increasingly restless in recent times. Jack spent his days in his rural home, troubled and unable to calm down. When Ethan arrived at his grandfather's house and stepped inside, the atmosphere changed dramatically. In that moment, Ethan felt the gravity of his grandfather's seriousness. Just a few weeks ago, Jack had been healthy and cheerful, but now his face was marked with deep concern and anxiety. Jack, walking heavily toward the living room, turned to Ethan and looked him straight in the eye. "You think you know what happened in Roswell in 1947, but in reality, none of it is as it was told," he said. This sentence struck like lightning in Ethan's mind. The UFO crash in Roswell in 1947 had been the subject of global debates for years. The events that took place back then were still the foundation of many conspiracy theories. However, Ethan could sense that his grandfather's serious approach meant that there was a much deeper side to the story. Jack silently placed an old metal box on the table. The box was worn and darkened with age, showing the marks of time. As Jack carefully opened it, he said, "This box will prove everything I'm about to tell you." Ethan trusted his grandfather's words and approached the box, beginning to examine its contents. Inside were yellowed documents, dusty photographs, and a very old audio recording. Each piece seemed to reveal a truth that had been hidden for years. Ethan carefully opened the first document. It contained handwritten notes and faded, darkened photographs. Some of the photos depicted what was said to be debris from the Roswell incident, showing metallic objects. Jack lowered his voice and continued, "The government has been hiding this truth for years, but I want to share it with you. You're ready to know it now." Ethan, slowly giving in to his grandfather's seriousness, realized how important and dangerous the situation might be. Jack began to explain that the Roswell incident was not a simple UFO crash, but rather part of a much deeper conspiracy involving extraterrestrial beings. What crashed in Roswell in 1947 was a UFO, but that was just the beginning, he said. The military quickly took control of the area the day after the crash and claimed it was just a weather balloon, but we knew what it really was. Ethan was confused, trying to make sense of his grandfather's words. Jack then pulled out an old photograph. The photo showed fragments of an unexplained object with metallic and unrecognizable writing on it. The clarity of the photograph made it nearly impossible for a human to understand such a structure. As Ethan examined the photo more closely, he realized that it contained the remains of an extraterrestrial being. This photograph seemed to prove that his grandfather's words were true. Jack's story only became more shocking. "At the time I was with the CIA, but I was a new member. That's why I couldn't intervene directly in the incident. But I learned a lot from the inside." As Jack recounted the events, the fear and anxiety in his eyes had not faded. Only the soldiers and scientists at the scene knew what happened, but many of them disappeared. The witnesses went missing. We all knew, but no one dared to speak. As Ethan listened deeply, Jack spoke about how back then the government had threatened civilians who had witnessed the event. Some were silenced with money, but a few resisted, and by the mid-1950s they mysteriously lost their lives. Jack explained that these disappearances were not coincidences, and that the government had done everything it could to keep its secrets hidden. "I found the statement of a witness," Jack said, pulling out a paper from the pile of old documents. It was from a flight lieutenant named William Carter. He had seen the truth. Here's what he said. Jack looked at the paper and then read aloud to Ethan. "What I saw couldn't have been a weather balloon. It had a metallic, unidentifiable structure and biological traces inside. Our superiors told us to never release this, but everyone knew it wasn't man-made." Ethan's heart raced as he heard these words. Jack took a deep breath and continued, his eyes distant. "Carter died in a car accident a few years later. But Whether it was really an accident is highly questionable. Ethan shook his head, uncertain but deeply imprinting this information in his mind. With each passing moment, more questions filled Ethan's mind. There was a deeper mystery behind these events, and his grandfather Jack had kept this secret for years. Now, all the pieces of the puzzle had come together, and Ethan began to realize the meaning behind every word his grandfather had told him. Jack Reynolds wasn't just his grandfather. He was carrying a secret that, if revealed, could change the world forever. As Ethan held the box his grandfather had given him, he became increasingly aware of the magnitude of the secret it contained. Jack Reynolds wasn't just a man with a past. He had entrusted Ethan with a truth that no one else had ever been told. The object that crashed in Roswell in 1947 had become one of the greatest mysteries of all time, and now, according to his grandfather, it was far more terrifying than Ethan could have imagined. Everything Jack continued to explain only made things more complicated in Ethan's mind. His grandfather had clearly stated that he knew far more about the Roswell incident than he had ever let on. The real story behind the UFO that crashed in Roswell in 1947 was a turning point in confirming the existence of extraterrestrial life, but the government had done everything in its power to conceal the truth. Jack, being a new member of the CIA at the time, had received much information from the inside. However, back then, he hadn't fully grasped the entire scope of the incident. Now, years later, as he shared the truth with Ethan, the fear and anxiety that had come from keeping such a secret for so long was still clearly visible in his eyes. A UFO crashed in Roswell in 1947, Jack said slowly and carefully, but that was just the first step. The government immediately moved to take control of the situation. The military sealed off the area the day after the crash. That day, what everyone saw was dismissed as just a weather balloon, and the whole event was covered up. Ethan found it hard to believe his grandfather's words at first, but with each passing moment he began to realize that what Jack was saying made more and more sense. The government's swift action and the immediate cover-up of the incident clearly indicated that something was being hidden. Jack explained that this was not just a simple cover-up due to government fear, it was much more. But the truly shocking part was what the crashed object actually contained. While the government claimed it was a weather balloon, according to Jack, the truth was entirely different. Jack showed Ethan old photographs and said, "Back then we learned that the debris from the object contained only metal fragments and unrecognizable writing. But these weren't parts of a balloon. The government covered up the fact that it was the remains of extraterrestrial technology." As Ethan looked at the old photos his grandfather showed him, he began to realize just how frightening they were. In the center of the photo, intertwined metal parts were visible, with strange and complex symbols written on them. There must have been some meaning behind those symbols, but Ethan couldn't decipher what language they were in. As he delved deeper into the details of the photo, suddenly Jack's voice warned him, "Ethan, learning about this could be dangerous. But once we've started, there's no turning back." Jack continued to explain how, years ago when he worked at the CIA, the government had gathered much more information than anyone knew. The wreckage of the UFO that crashed in 1947 had been taken to the Los Alamos National Laboratory, and during the first analyses, it was revealed that the object wasn't just a technological device, it also contained biological remains. Jack showed Ethan documents that detailed the biological traces found in the wreckage, and Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. In the first analysis at Los Alamos, organic tissue was found inside the object, Jack said, his voice even lower. And this tissue was definitely not of human origin. It was the remains of an extraterrestrial being. Ethan couldn't believe what his grandfather was saying. His grandfather was claiming they had proof of extraterrestrial life. Before Jack could go into more detail, he warned Ethan, "The government has threatened the lives of everyone who came into contact with this information. Many scientists studied this evidence, but in the end, either they were silenced or they disappeared." Ethan began to realize that the events his grandfather was revealing went far deeper than he could have imagined. Jack wasn't just showing him military secrets. He was exposing how the government had orchestrated one of the biggest cover-ups in history. Many military personnel and scientists saw the truth of what happened, and all of them somehow disappeared, Jack continued. These weren't ordinary people. Flight officers, scientists, doctors, each one disappeared or mysteriously died in strange accidents. In Ethan's mind, there were too many questions about how all this information fit together. He couldn't comprehend how the government had managed to conceal such a massive conspiracy, nor could he understand how they had silenced so many people. Jack, without revealing too much, made it clear that these events were part of an extraterrestrial intervention. Many people had doubts about what they had seen, Jack said, pulling out an old document. For example, there was a flight officer named William Carter. He too had to speak about what he had witnessed. What I saw could not have been a weather balloon. It had a metallic, unidentifiable structure, and it contained biological traces, William Carter had said. But they had told him not to spread this information. Yet everyone knew it was not man-made. Ethan realized how shocking William Carter's statements were. The fact that the officer had made a warning about the government's threats before his death indicated that there was a more complex side to all of this. Jack said Carter died in a car accident a few years later, but Ethan couldn't help but wonder if it had really been an accident. As his grandfather continued to tell the story, he mentioned how some scientists within the CIA at the time had studied the DNA of the extraterrestrial beings. The government had not only studied their technology, but also their biological structures. Jack said that some scientists had discovered that the DNA of these beings had a significant similarity to human DNA. This made Ethan even more uneasy. So, did these beings have some connection to humans? Ethan asked, unable to hold back. Jack nodded and took a deep breath. Yes, Ethan. That's the biggest secret of Roswell. They were closer to us than we ever imagined. Maybe even closer than us to ourselves. With these final words, Ethan realized just how much bigger and more dangerous these events had become. Roswell was not just about a UFO crash. Behind it lay a much deeper, more terrifying secret that could change the course of history. This secret would never be revealed in the way people expected. As his grandfather continued his tale, Ethan felt trapped between fear and curiosity. Jack Reynolds wasn't just telling him about a mystery from the past. He was uncovering far darker truths about the government's and the military's actions at the time. Indeed, the truth behind the Roswell incident went far deeper than anyone had thought. The government's efforts to cover it up weren't just about hiding the truth. They also involved silencing, threatening, and sometimes even killing witnesses. Ethan had begun to learn about a secret that could only be uncovered after years of research. But each new piece of information dragged him further into a dark world. As Jack explained how far the government and military had gone to protect this secret, Ethan felt a growing unease. Back then, many of the soldiers and scientists who had witnessed what happened in Roswell suddenly disappeared, Jack said, his eyes mixed with sorrow and anger. The first witnesses spoke about what they saw, but doing so cost them dearly. Ethan realized that the disappearance of these witnesses couldn't have been a coincidence. As his grandfather described the immense pressure behind these events, there was a deep fear in his eyes, the kind that only years of carrying such a secret could bring. The government tried every way to silence these people. Most of the witnesses were directly threatened. A few were paid to stay silent, Jack said slowly. But some resisted. In the end, most of them died in mysterious accidents. Ethan's mind began to spin with questions about who these disappeared people were and how they had been silenced. Jack continued with the story. These weren't ordinary people, most were military personnel, but the most notable was a flight officer, William Carter. He was one of the first to witness the crash and had the courage to speak out about what he saw. Ethan had never heard of William Carter before, but he could see the mixture of respect and fear in his grandfather's eyes as he spoke. Carter was one of the first people to see the crash. His statement only deepened the government's efforts to conceal the truth about the incident, Jack said, quoting from an old document. What I saw couldn't have been a balloon, Carter had said. It had a metallic, unidentifiable structure, and it contained biological traces. Our superiors told us never to release this information, but everyone knew it wasn't man-made. As Ethan read these lines, a wave of mixed emotions hit him. On one hand, he couldn't believe the reality of this event. On the other, He found that his grandfather's words were starting to make sense. After Carter's statement, Jack continued, recalling the days when Carter had disappeared. Carter died in a car accident a few years later. But that accident was suspicious. No one knows for sure if it really was an accident. Ethan felt a deep sense of unease upon hearing this. If Carter had indeed been a victim of foul play, it would only give a hint of how far the government had gone to cover up the incident. The government's efforts to conceal the truth hadn't just been about silencing witnesses. They had manipulated every possible detail to keep the truth from the public. As Jack spoke, there was a visible pain and regret in his eyes. "You never understood, Ethan," he said. "Back then, knowing this information meant putting your life in danger. I was aware of that. But now, I'm telling you this. Because the truth needs to come out," Jack said. Ethan felt the weight of his grandfather's words. If so many people had disappeared after what happened to Carter, then the truth behind the Roswell incident was far more than just a UFO crash. Indeed, seeing how deep the government had gone to bury its secrets terrified Ethan. As Jack continued, Ethan could feel how terrifying the situation had become. What the government did wasn't just about covering this up, Jack said. They also targeted the witnesses, because what they knew was the existence of extraterrestrial beings. They did everything to silence anyone who might hear this truth. As Ethan swung between fear and curiosity, he continued examining the documents in his grandfather's hands. One photograph caught his attention. It was a picture of a group of soldiers standing together, but when he looked closely at the background, several shadowy figures became visible. These figures were so faint that they wouldn't normally be noticed, but when Ethan zoomed in on the image, he realized they were something other than ordinary military personnel. They were beings from another planet. The more he thought about it, the more his fear intensified. "Who were they?" Ethan asked, biting his lip. Jack studied the photo for a moment, falling into deep silence. "They looked like us, but they were different. They weren't human, Ethan. They were beings from another world. The government had made contact with them, but for what purpose and how, I don't know. But the one thing I do know is that understanding what happened there in those years wasn't good for anyone." Ethan was frozen in place, stunned by the horrifying truths his grandfather was revealing. He was beginning to realize that the Roswell incident was just the beginning of something far bigger. The scale of the government's manipulations to cover this up helped him understand the deep secrets behind the deaths of those who had died back then. The disappearances and silencing of witnesses weren't coincidences, but a strategy. And now Ethan had learned this secret, but this knowledge carried a weight that could put his life in danger. As he absorbed each new piece of information, the one question that grew in his mind was, why had so many people pursued this great mystery? And most importantly, what had the government done after the crash at Roswell? Everything Jack Reynolds had said pointed to something far greater than just a crash, a massive issue arising from contact with an extraterrestrial being. This was going far beyond just a UFO crash. Ethan continued to listen, motionless, as his grandfather indicated for him to pull up a chair and sit. Jack was now explaining the secrets he had kept hidden for years, recounting the terrifying period in far more detail than ever before. What he said about Area 51 just after the Roswell incident deepened Ethan's terror even further. Jack spoke, with a stern expression. "Ethan, after the crash in Roswell, the first thing the government did was hide any material they had obtained about the crash. It wasn't just about the debris. What was truly terrifying was the biological beings found in the wreckage." Ethan was struggling to understand his grandfather's words. "Biological beings?" he asked, his voice trembling. "You mean living creatures from another planet?" Jack nodded and took a deep breath. "Yes," he said. "The object? That crash didn't just contain technology. It also contained one or more living beings. At the time, the government didn't miss any opportunity to study them." Jack's voice trembled, reflecting the fear and regret from those years. Ethan slowly processed each word, waiting for Jack to continue. Jack went on. "Most of these biological beings were studied directly by the CIA and the Pentagon. Many, Scientists found that the DNA of these beings bore a striking resemblance to human DNA. These beings had a genetic connection to us. But this revealed a truth that could upend human history. If extraterrestrial beings are connected to humans, then everything we've thought about humanity's place in the universe could be wrong. Ethan nodded, trying to grasp what his grandfather was saying. So, these beings, were they some kind of human? Or did they at least have a biological structure similar to ours, he asked. Jack looked at his grandson intently and replied, "No one could say for certain. But some scientists suggested that the DNA samples might not only be related to humans, but possibly even to a much older race. These beings could have been representatives of a civilization much older than ours." Discovering this scared the government because this information could have shaken all our religious, historical, and scientific beliefs. Ethan felt the enormity of the knowledge Jack was revealing, and he could hardly believe the implications of it all. Everything he thought he knew was being challenged by his grandfather's revelations. Ethan sank into a deep silence, his mind racing with the implications of his grandfather's words. The idea of a genetic link to an extraterrestrial being didn't make sense at first, but with every word Jack spoke, it became clear that there had to be a purpose behind such a massive secret being kept hidden for so long. Jack, after a pause, shifted the conversation to Area 51. "Do you know why they created Area 51, Jack asked. Right after the Roswell incident, the government and military took all the materials they retrieved from the crash to the Los Alamos National Laboratory. There, they conducted extensive research on the wreckage. But what was truly terrifying was that these materials didn't just contain technology, they also contained biological elements. Various scientists examined live beings during that time. But what happened there wasn't just scientific experiments. There were secret tests and experiments designed to make contact with superhuman beings." Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. "So, not only was there technology but live beings were experimented on?" he asked, his voice shaky. Jack silently nodded. "Yes. The experiments on these beings didn't just study their biological structures. They also explored their mental and telepathic abilities. People discovered that these beings had cognitive abilities far beyond human minds. The government wanted to use this information to their advantage because it wasn't just about technology. It was knowledge that could redefine humanity itself." Ethan was left alone with countless questions and hypotheses swirling in his head. Area 51 was more than just a place for hiding extraterrestrial secrets. It was a center where experiments were conducted that questioned humanity's place in the universe. With every new piece of information Jack revealed, Ethan found himself closer to uncovering the depths of this mystery. After a while, Jack looked at him seriously. "Ethan," he said, "these things were much bigger than you can understand. Back then, learning this information meant putting your life in danger. I'm telling you this now because I believe it's time for this secret to come out. But be careful. What the government has hidden goes beyond science. These are truths that carry the greatest secrets of human history. If you choose to expose them, your life could be at risk." Ethan carefully examined the documents in his hands, the photographs, old notes, and voice recordings. They didn't just contain technological discoveries, they held a truth that could reshape human history itself. Will the truth ever come out? Ethan asked quietly. Jack slowly shook his head. For the truth to come out, many of us will have to pay a price. But remember this, Ethan. If this secret comes to light, humanity will never be the same. Everything will change. Ethan looked down at the documents again, feeling the weight of his grandfather's words pressing down on him. This was more than just a crash. It was the discovery of a secret that could rewrite humanity's fate. And now, Ethan knew this secret. But what he chose to do next would change his life forever. As he sifted through the documents, the fear inside him only grew. Jack Reynolds's every detail painted a picture that was even more terrifying and complex than he had imagined. The Roswell crash wasn't just a UFO falling from the sky. It represented a deep, hidden truth about extraterrestrial life, government cover-ups, and dark experiments. Ethan felt trapped in a web of truth that reached far beyond the surface of what he had known. But now, as Jack's explanations sank in, a deeper question emerged. Why was the government hiding such a monumental truth? Why were they refusing to share this crucial information with humanity? Ethan's mind raced, trying to find answers, but everything was becoming more convoluted. He pondered what might happen if these secrets were ever revealed to the world. Jack's voice echoed in his mind. Ethan, if these truths come out, everything will change. He had explained that the government believed protecting these secrets wasn't just for their own security. It was crucial to maintaining the world order. If these facts were pursued, they would have to rewrite history. People would start questioning their own past. Religious beliefs would crumble, and humanity's isolation in the universe would be shattered in a way no one was prepared for. Ethan realized the gravity of what his grandfather had said. The exposure of these truths could cause chaos, not just in the scientific world but around the globe. If humanity learned it wasn't alone in the universe, it could shake the foundations of both science and religion. And if nations that gained access to these secrets used them for their own gain, the balance of power across the world could shift, possibly leading to endless conflict. Then why are they still not revealing this? Ethan asked, lost in thought. If this information spread across the world, what could people really change? What would happen? Jack's eyes grew a little colder as he replied, Ethan, much more would happen than you think, he said. If people learned that extraterrestrial beings share similar traits with us, and perhaps even made contact with us long before, it would completely change their perspectives on themselves and their history. People would start questioning their existence. Which religions will they believe in? Which historical events will they accept as true? The connection between extraterrestrials and humans could reveal a truth that would lead us to question all old beliefs. Ethan's questions kept growing in his mind. As he listened carefully to his grandfather, he felt that he was holding information that could create a major change in the world. The revelation of such a huge truth could lead to the greatest revolution in human history. However, the cost would be very high. The release of these secrets could perhaps be catastrophic for humanity. Jack, looking deeply at Ethan, continued, If this information gets out, countries and those in power will try to use this secret for their own advantage. Governments will enter a massive arms race. They'll chase after technological knowledge. They'll try to create a stronger world order. And even more importantly, people will lose their sense of isolation. Learning that we are not alone in this universe, that we may have interacted with beings we never knew existed, could lead humanity to collapse. Ethan thought for a moment, considering his grandfather's words. Keeping such a huge secret seemed to carry a certain meaning. However, Jack was now clearly pointing out the immense danger that revealing the secret could bring. If people learned this truth, everything could change. Humanity might have to accept that they are not alone in the universe. This realization could scare people more than anything else. Jack said one final thing. But now some information has started leaking. The government has already begun to accept that it's impossible to keep all this information hidden. In recent years, some documents have made their way to the public, and research into extraterrestrial beings is drawing more attention every day. Secret documents are leaking. The truth is coming out, Ethan. But revealing these truths will come at a very high cost. The government will inevitably start watching you because you've learned this information. It could make you a target. Ethan's heart started pounding faster. Why are you telling me this, Grandpa? Do you want me to reveal this to the world? If I do, it could be a death sentence for me. And as you said, the cost of exposing these secrets will be enormous. Jack took a deep breath. I don't want you to do it, Ethan. But I know that one day the truth will come out. If anyone should reveal this secret, it should be you. But I'm telling you this because I want to protect you. If you decide to expose this secret, you must be careful. Sometimes, staying silent is the only way to protect your life. Jack gave his grandson one last look before continuing. If you decide to reveal this truth, no one will protect you. But I must tell you one thing, Ethan. If you're brave enough to expose this secret, the world will remember you. And maybe Just maybe, it will be a turning point for humanity. As Ethan repeated his grandfather's words in his mind, he realized that the world was about to enter a completely different phase. Revealing the truth could change his life and the entire world. However, it would also bring great danger. Ethan wondered what he should do. Should he share the truth or stay silent? This was now the greatest decision he would ever face. Ethan, turning his grandfather Jack's last words over and over in his mind, tried to figure out what he should do about his future. After Jack's death, many questions had started to form in Ethan's mind. Could revealing the truth create a revolution for humanity, or would following this secret lead him down an irreversible path? Ethan began to feel the weight of the situation. Knowing what Jack had shared with him gave him strength, but it also filled him with deep fear. One morning, a mailman knocked on Ethan's door. There was an anonymous envelope bearing his name. Inside was a single note. "Do not follow him. Stay silent." Ethan read the note and took a deep breath. On one hand, there was fear. On the other, indecision. This was the first threat Ethan received after his grandfather's death, but it carried a deeper meaning. He knew that he always had to be cautious, making sure to monitor every move of the government. This threat marked a turning point that would completely change his life and future. In the weeks following Jack's death, Ethan tried in some way to live his life normally, but with each passing day he began to feel how alone he truly was in the world. The weight of the secret his grandfather had kept from him caused the uncertainty and fear within him to grow. He was aware of the dangers of revealing the truth, but as his grandfather had said, he had to take a step. He had to carry on his legacy. However, he knew very well how dangerous that legacy was. One night, Ethan couldn't sleep until morning. In his dreams, old CIA files, secret documents, and all the secrets the government had hidden tangled together. When he woke up, the emptiness caused by Jack's loss was even deeper. Jack had so much to tell him, but eventually, he fell silent and only said, "Stay silent." What was behind those final words? Perhaps as his grandfather had thought, his life shouldn't be put in further danger. But Ethan, on the other hand, was willing to reveal this secret because the time had come for the world to face the truth. A few nights later, he decided to take action, risking everything to fulfill Jack's last will. One morning, there was a car waiting outside Ethan's house. Inside, there was an unfamiliar man. The man lowered his window and approached Ethan, giving him a long look. At first, Ethan couldn't recognize the man because of the black suit and glasses he wore, but something else caught his attention. The man was holding a copy of the old box Jack had kept. "This is a part of Jack," the man said in a dark tone. "And it will be a part of you too." Ethan paused for a moment, but then began to understand the man's words. Finding the secret Jack had kept was the first step to everything. But now the questions about how Jack had died resurfaced. He wanted to ask more questions to learn who the man was. But the man silenced him with a gesture. "Yes, I know," the man said, ignoring Ethan's silence. "We've been watching you since your grandfather's death, but this too has meaning. You need to understand. What he said is just the beginning. If you don't take the right steps, these secrets will go to the grave with you, or something much worse will happen." As Ethan looked at the man, the confusion in his mind deepened. Was the man's claim true? Should he see Jack's death as an assassination? "I need to tell this secret," Ethan thought. "I have to expose it. Jack wanted me to do this, and if necessary, I must pay the price." The man seemed to notice the determination in Ethan's eyes. "Yes, I know you're thinking the right thing. But don't forget, there is no turning back on this journey. The revelation of this information will put you in danger, and it will draw even more attention from those watching you. No one will be able to help you." As Ethan listened to the man, he remembered his grandfather's words. "Stay silent, but a time will come for you. You'll know what to do then." Those words echoed in Ethan's mind. The man took a deep breath and extended the box toward Ethan. "Take this. This box is not just yours. It's also the last memory and secret Jack left for you. If you don't take it, everything will end. But if you do, you'll have to start. This box will lead you in pursuit of the secret. It will take you on a journey that will change your future and the world. Think carefully. Ethan took the box and returned home. The unease and uncertainty still gnawed at him, but he decided to open the box. Inside, there were several notes written by Jack and highly classified documents. Ethan's hands trembled as he examined the papers. The contents of the documents held intertwined secrets of the government and extraterrestrial beings. He realized that everything was going deeper than he had thought. However, not long after, things began to change at Ethan's home. When he opened the window, he noticed several black cars parked around the streets near his house. The cars were parked carefully. Suddenly, Ethan felt more alone than ever. Everything was turning into a labyrinth. As Ethan carried Jack's legacy, he began to sense the danger the truths he wanted to reveal posed to him. But one thing was certain. Carrying this secret would be a turning point not just for Ethan, but for all of humanity. Sharing the truth meant embarking on a journey with no end.